Ruth Bader Ginsburg, born Joan Ruth Bader, March 15, 1933, September 18, 2020, also known by her initials RBG, was an American jurist who served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States from 1993 until her death in 2020. She was nominated by President Bill Clinton on June 14, 1993, and had served since August 10, 1993. Ginsburg was the second woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court after Sandra Day O'Connor. Following O'Connor's retirement in 2006 and until Sonia Sotomayor joined the court in 2009, she was the only female justice on the Supreme Court. During that time, Ginsburg became more forceful with her dissents, which were noted by legal observers and in popular culture. She was generally viewed as belonging to the liberal wing of the court. Ginsburg authored notable majority opinions, including United States v. Virginia, 1996, Olmstead v. L.C., 1999, and Friends of the Earth Incorporated v. Laidlaw Environmental Services Incorporated, 2000. Ginsburg was born in Brooklyn, New York. Her older sister died when she was a baby, and her mother, one of her biggest sources of encouragement, died shortly before Ginsburg graduated from high school. She then earned her bachelor's degree at Cornell University, and became a wife and mother before starting law school at Harvard, where she was one of the few women in her class. Ginsburg transferred to Columbia Law School, where she graduated tied for first in her class. Following law school, Ginsburg entered into academia. She was a professor at Rutgers Law School and Columbia Law School, teaching civil procedure as one of the few women in her field. Ginsburg spent a considerable part of her legal career as an advocate for the advancement of gender equality and women's rights, winning multiple arguments before the Supreme Court. She advocated as a volunteer attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union and was a member of its board of directors and one of its general counsels in the 1970s. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter appointed her to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, where she served until her appointment to the Supreme Court. Ginsburg received attention in American popular culture for her fiery liberal dissents and refusal to step down. She was dubbed the Notorious RBG, a play on the name of the rapper known as the Notorious B.I.G., in reference to her notable dissents. She died at 87 years of age at her home in Washington, D.C., on September 18, 2020, from complications of metastatic pancreatic cancer. Joan Ruth Bader was born on March 15, 1933, in the New York City borough of Brooklyn, the second daughter of Celia, née Amster, and Nathan Bader, who lived in the Flatbush neighborhood. Her father was a Jewish immigrant from Odessa, Ukraine, then in the Russian Empire, and her mother was born in New York to Austrian Jewish parents. The Baders' older daughter Marilyn died of meningitis at age 6, when Ruth was 14 months old. The family called Joan Ruth Kiki, a nickname Marilyn had given her for being a Kiki baby. When Kiki started school, Celia discovered that her daughter's class had several other girls named Joan, so Celia suggested that the teacher call her daughter Ruth to avoid confusion. Although not devout, the Bader family belonged to East Midwood Jewish Center, a conservative synagogue, where Ruth learned tenets of the Jewish faith and gained familiarity with the Hebrew language. 14 to 15. At age 13, Ruth acted as the camp rabbi at a Jewish summer program at Camp Che Nawa in Minerva, New York. Celia took an active role in her daughter's education, often taking her to the library. Celia had been a good student in her youth, graduating from high school at age 15, yet she could not further her own education because her family instead chose to send her brother to college. Celia wanted her daughter to get more education, which she thought would allow Ruth to become a high school history teacher. Ruth attended James Madison High School, whose law program later dedicated a courtroom in her honor. Celia struggled with cancer throughout Ruth's high school years and died the day before Ruth's high school graduation. Bader attended Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, where she was a member of Alpha Epsilon Phi. While at Cornell, she met Martin D. Ginsburg at age 17. She graduated from Cornell with a Bachelor of Arts degree in government on June 23, 1954. She was a member of Phi Beta Kappa and the highest-ranking female student in her graduating class. Bader married Ginsburg a month after her graduation from Cornell. She and Martin moved to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he was stationed as a Reserve Officers Training Corps officer in the Army Reserve after his call-up to active duty. At age 21, she worked for the Social Security Administration office in Oklahoma, where she was demoted after becoming pregnant with her first child. She gave birth to a daughter in 1955. In the fall of 1956, Ginsburg enrolled at Harvard Law School, where she was one of only 9 women in a class of about 500 men. The dean of Harvard Law reportedly invited all of the female law students to dinner at his family home and asked the female law students, including Ginsburg, "Why are you at Harvard Law School, taking the place of a man?" When her husband took a job in New York City, Ginsburg transferred to Columbia Law School and became the first woman to be on 2 major law reviews, the Harvard Law Review and Columbia Law Review. In 1959, she earned her law degree at Columbia and tied for first in her class. At the start of her legal career, Ginsburg encountered difficulty in finding employment. In 1960, Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter rejected Ginsburg for a clerkship position due to her gender. She was rejected despite a strong recommendation from Albert Martin Sachs, who was a professor and later dean of Harvard Law School. Columbia Law professor Gerald Gunther also pushed for Judge Edmund L. Palmieri of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York to hire Ginsburg as a law clerk, threatening to never recommend another Columbia student to Palmieri if he did not give Ginsburg the opportunity, and guaranteeing to provide the judge with a replacement clerk should Ginsburg not succeed. Later that year, Ginsburg began her clerkship for Judge Palmieri, and she held the position for 2 years. Academia. From 1961 to 1963, Ginsburg was a research associate and then an associate director of the Columbia Law School Project on International Procedure. She learned Swedish to co-author a book with Anders Berzelius on civil procedure in Sweden. Ginsburg conducted extensive research for her book at Lund University in Sweden. Ginsburg's time in Sweden also influenced her thinking on gender equality. She was inspired when she observed the changes in Sweden, where women were 20 to 25% of all law students. One of the judges whom Ginsburg watched for her research was 8 months pregnant and still working. Her first position as a professor was at Rutgers Law School in 1963. The appointment was not without its drawbacks. Ginsburg was informed she would be paid less than her male colleagues because she had a husband with a well-paid job. At the time Ginsburg entered academia, she was one of fewer than 20 female law professors in the United States. She was a professor of law, mainly civil procedure, at Rutgers from 1963 to 1972, receiving tenure from the school in 1969. In 1970, she co-founded the Women's Rights Law Reporter, the first law journal in the U.S. to focus exclusively on women's rights. From 1972 to 1980, she taught at Columbia, where she became the first tenured woman and co-authored the first law school casebook on sex discrimination. She also spent a year as a fellow of the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences at Stanford University from 1977 to 1978. When John Paul Stevens retired in 2010, Ginsburg became the oldest justice on the court at age 77. Despite rumors that she would retire because of advancing age, poor health, and the death of her husband, she denied she was planning to step down. In an August 2010 interview, Ginsburg stated that her work on the court was helping her cope with the death of her husband. She also expressed a wish to emulate Justice Louis Brandeis' service of nearly 23 years, which she achieved in April 2016. She stated she has a new model to emulate in former colleague Justice John Paul Stevens, who retired at age 90 after nearly 35 years on the bench. During the presidency of Barack Obama, some progressive attorneys and activists called for Ginsburg to retire so that Obama would be able to appoint a like-minded successor, particularly while the Democratic Party held control of the U.S. Senate. They pointed to Ginsburg's age and past health issues as factors making her longevity uncertain. Ginsburg rejected these pleas. She affirmed her wish to remain a justice as long as she was mentally sharp enough to perform her duties. Moreover, Ginsburg opined that the political climate would prevent Obama from appointing a jurist like herself. At the time of her death in September 2020, Ginsburg was the fourth oldest serving Supreme Court justice ever, at age 87. Ruth Bader Ginsburg will forever be seen as a person who was able to get the most out of her time and influence many generations to come.